الحمد لله حمد الشاكرين والصلاة والسلام على المبعوث رحمة العالمين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين أما بعد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Inshallah, in this episode we will be speaking and covering inshallah common mistakes in wudu and salah which would lead to invalidating the salah. And before I begin, it is very important for the Muslim, and it is wajib, it is compulsory upon every Muslim to know the rulings pertaining to wudu and salah, as the salah is something which is obligatory upon every Muslim. And since it's an obligation, it is wajib upon him to know matters which pertain to it, especially the matters which would lead to one's salah being invalid, as the salah is the second pillar of Islam, and without salah the Prophet ﷺ says, العهد الذي بيننا وبينهم الصلاة فمن تركها فقد كفر. The covenant between us and the non-believers is salah, and whoever leaves it, then he has disbelieved. Inshallah, to get straight into it, one of the mistakes that are made in wudu is, number one, not covering all the limbs with water. So if someone was, for example, washing his face, or washing his arms, or washing his feet, we must make sure that water has reached every part of that limb, and no part of that limb or that body part must be left dry. And a common mistake that is made when washing the face is that the full face isn't covered. And the ulama, when they spoke about what the face is that must be washed in wudu, they said من منابت الشعر المعتاد إلى من حدر لحيين طولا ومن الأذن إلى الأذن عرضا. They say that it is from where the usual hairline begins until the bottom of the chin, and that is going down this way. And from this side they say from ear to ear, and all that must be washed. So if someone was to bring water in his hand and wash like this, then we say that his wudu is invalid because he has not washed the full face. Another mistake that is made in terms of washing is that people often, when they get to washing their arm, they do not wash the hand with it because they have washed it in the beginning of the wudu. Now, we have a washing which is sunnah, which is to wash the hands 3 times in the beginning. And then we have a washing which is wajib and rukn, which is to wash from the hands, the fingertips, all the way to the elbow. Now, if someone was to get to his arms and he only washes from his wrist to the elbow, then his wudu is invalid because he must wash his hands with the arm again, even though he has washed it in the beginning of the wudu. And the Prophet ﷺ, he speaks about the one who misses part of his foot, part of his heel, and he says وَيْلٌ لِلْأَعْقَابِ مِنَ النَّارِ. The Prophet ﷺ promises a punishment which is called al-wayl in Yawm al-Qiyamah for those who miss out part of their heels when they are washing in wudu. Another common mistake is the use of excessive water. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, يا أيها الذين آمنوا خذوا زينتكم عند كل مسجد وكلوا واشربوا ولا تسرفوا إنه لا يحب المسرفين. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commands and prevents believers from being excessive in eating and drinking. Now, if being excessive in eating and drinking, which is a natural, habitual necessity of the human being, well, what about wudu, which is a religious thing? Being excessive in something which is religious is worse than being excessive in something which you need by nature. And the Prophet ﷺ says, يَأْتِي أَقْوَامٌ يَعْتَدُونَ فِي الدُّعَاءِ وَالطُّهُورِ. The Prophet ﷺ says that there will come a time where people transgress when it comes to dua, and they will transgress when it comes to their tahara, meaning their wudu and their ghusl. Another common mistake, very common, is that some people tend to wipe parts which must be washed. We all know that in wudu there are things which need to be washed and things which need to be wiped. Things which are wiped are the head. So you only get water in your hands, and you basically you rinse your hand, and then you wipe the head. As for washing is for the water to flow and to run on the body part. So a mistake that is made is that people wet their hands and then they wipe their arm, or they wet their hand and they wet their face. And that is not called washing, that is called wiping. And the only thing that is wiped in wudu is the head and the socks. If you wipe the face or wipe the arm, then the wudu is invalid and the salah subsequently becomes invalid. Of the mistakes that are made in salah is if there is a wrong pronunciation in Surah Al-Fatihah. If there is a wrong pronunciation in Surah Al-Fatihah, and one of the common ones is that people do not say وَلَا الضَّالِّينَ, rather they say وَلَا الضَّالِّينَ, and this changes the meaning. Al-Dallin is those who are led astray, and Al-Dallin is another word in the Arabic language with a different unrelated meaning, which means to stay somewhere, and it changes the meaning of the Qur'an. And the Fatiha, if there is a mistake made in the Fatiha which changes the meaning, then it invalidates the Salah. Other things is that people could rush through movements and therefore not come with the rukn of at-tuma'nina. At-tuma'nina is to be to rest in each position for a period amount of time, a minimal period amount of time, before raising up. Usually some people, what they do is that as soon as he gets his head, he lifts his head straight back up. We say that that invalidates the salah, because tuma'nina, which is for all limbs to be relaxed in one position, is a rukn, it's a pillar of the salah. Another thing is that when we do takbeer, this is mostly for the men who pray in the masjid with the imam, it is invalidating of one's salah. In fact, it's not invalidating. We say that your salah has not even commenced and it's not begun. If you do the takbirat al-ihram, which is Allahu Akbar in the beginning, if you were to do it as soon, in the same time that the imam does it. So whilst the imam is saying Allahu Akbar, you do Allahu Akbar with him. Then as you do that with him, then you have also, your salah has not begun, because the salah of the imam has not begun to begin with. So how can you follow someone whose salah has yet to begin? Therefore your salah would be invalid in that case. Another common mistake, which is that people, when they want to make up another rak'ah, they stand up after the imam does the first Salamu Alaikum. Obviously scholars have differed in this, but the correct opinion is that both taslim is rukn, and that both are pillars. So the first salam to the right, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Some people, what they do is that they stand up to make up whatever they missed after the imam finishes the first taslim, and they miss the second taslim with the imam. That person therefore invalidates his salah, and some ulama, they were lenient and they say that his salah turns into a voluntary salah and he still has to repeat the prayer that he done this action in. Another mistake is that some people, they do not look at the place of their sujud in salah, and they look around. And this is a thing, as the Prophet ﷺ says, هو اختلاس يختلسه الشيطان من صلاة العبد, that it is a portion which the shaitan takes out of the salah of the believer. And I think one of the Sahaba ibn Abbas, he mentions that some people would pray and they only get a tenth of the ajr, or half of the ajr, or a fifth of the ajr, because of lack of khushu' and concentration. And of the things that bring khushu' and humility in salah is to look down into the place that you are going to do sujud, rather than looking up, which is a sign of arrogance. One other common mistake that people make is that during sujud, that they wouldn't place all 7 limbs on the ground. And the 7 limbs that must be on the ground when you are praying in sujud is the forehead flat on the ground, so that the nose is also touching, and that is 1. The other 2 is both both hands, so that is 3 now. And then both knees must be on the ground, and both feet. What some people tend to do is that both of their feet are not on the ground, or one of them is raised and it is on top of the other one, meaning that one of his feet did not touch the ground during the sujud. What that does is that it invalidates the rak'ah, so the person has to make up that rak'ah, and if the person doesn't make up the rak'ah, then it subsequently would invalidate the salah as a whole. And to end on this note is that the ulama, they say that لا يعذر بالجهل في باب الأوامر, that when it comes to things which the shara, which the deen commands you with, that it is not an excuse to say that you didn't know. In fact, those things which are an obligation upon you, you must seek the knowledge that would be enough for you to establish things which are wajib upon you, such as the wudu, such as salam, such as siyam, fasting, and so on and so forth. You cannot say, I didn't know that in Salah I should be reading Fatihah. These are things that you should know, and that it is not an excuse for you to say, I didn't know. Similarly, this is why the Prophet ﷺ says, طَلَبُ الْعِلْمِ فَرِيضَةٌ عَلَى كُلِّ مُسْلِمٍ, that seeking knowledge is a fard, a compulsory thing upon every believer. The ulama, they said, what the Prophet ﷺ means, that it is compulsory for one to seek knowledge of those things that it is compulsory upon him to do. As for other things such as the rulings pertaining to buying and selling, and the rulings pertaining to inheritance, the certain rulings pertaining to judiciary and Islam, these are not wajib upon every single person. But what is wajib upon every person is to know how to establish things which he has been commanded to establish, such as his wudu, such as his salah, and such as his siyam, fasting, and so on and so forth. Wallahu a'lam. وصلى الله وسلم على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.